Hi, today I wanted to go over an in-class practice with you before you do the quiz 3-1 to 3-1 to 3-3 review on your own. So this is at the back of your 3-1 to 3-3 review. And I know it's kind of tight spaces there. I tried to kind of fit a lot on here right at the end. If you don't feel like there's enough room to get on there what you need, feel free to write it on a different sheet of paper and just attach it to it. So let's go through these together. See if you can kind of think through them before I say what the answers are, and that'll kind of give you a double check that you know what you're doing, and then you'll get to do some practice on your own on the other page. So on number 1, it says all segments parallel to segment HG. And so if I look here for HG, it is right here. And remember what parallel means. Parallel lines are lines that do not intersect each other and never will intersect even if you extend them out, but they are in the same plane. So to me, they're facing the same direction and they're in the same plane. Again, if they're in the same plane, a sheet of paper or like a saw blade is like a plane. I could fit all of both of those lines within, slicing through with a saw blade or a sheet of paper. Okay, so on number 1, all segments parallel to segment HG would be segment EF. See if I can fit these in here. So EF and AB. You might not think AB is parallel to HG, but it is. Again, even though it's kind of a diagonal, I could take a saw blade and slice through like in a diagonal fashion through that box and hit all of both of those lines. So that is still, they are still in the same plane and they're facing the same direction and they would never intersect if you extend them out. And the last one is DC. Okay, so those are 3 options for number 1. On number 2, it says a plane parallel to plane EFB. So let's find the plane that it's referring to. And we can see that EFB is this side of the box over here, kind of the left side of the box. So a plane parallel to that would be on the opposite side over here. Again, if I extend those planes out, they would never intersect. So if I want to name this right side of the box, I can use any 3 of those letters. It does not matter which 3. I'm just going to go with H, G, C. And again, I'm doing all 3 letters, no commas in between, and that's how I can name a plane. On number 3, it says, that's not a very good G. All segments skew to EA. So skew is probably a word that's not as familiar to you yet, because you probably just learned it the other day. And so skew is similar to parallel in the sense that the 2 lines do not intersect each other, even if you extend them out, but they are not in the same plane. Okay, so they are not facing the same direction and therefore not in the same plane. They're kind of shooting off in different directions. So if I find EA, which is right here, and I want to name some lines that are skewed to that, then one of those would be FG. See here how it's going the opposite way. They would never intersect each other, but they are not in the same plane. They're not facing the same direction. So FG is one. Okay, another one would be BC. Similar reasoning there. Another one would be, let me do a different color. Another one would be FB. You can see over here. Actually, that's not a good one to say. Skew to EA, that would be parallel, so I don't want to say that one. Scratch that. And let's see, the other one I have, I guess the other 2 I can see that I would do would be HG. Would be another one. And DC would be another one. Okay, so all those would be skew to EA. On number 4, it says all segments parallel to plane ABCD. So they don't normally name a plane with 4 points, but I guess they chose to this time. And so if I find ABCD, which is the bottom of the box, and I want to say segments parallel to that, that's just naming segments that do not intersect with that plane. So I don't want any of these vertical segments because they all intersect with that plane. So I basically want to name any of these up here. EF would work. FG would work. GH would work. And EH would work. Okay, so that's number 4. All right, now we move over to number 5. It says name 2 pairs of each angle type. So there could be multiple ones besides what I named, but they're just asking for 2 pair. So in terms of corresponding angles, remember corresponding angles are in the same relative position. So with respect to the 2 lines and the transversal. So 1 pair of corresponding angles would be like 3 and 8. And another pair of corresponding angles would be like 1 and 7. Okay, again, they're in the same relative position, meaning in both of these cases, they're both to the right of their transversal and they're both above their respective 2 line. Okay, now if we look at, let me erase those and pick another color. So we look for alternate interior angles. Alternate interior, again, alternate I think of means different. So 5 and 8 are on different sides of the transversal, but both inside their respective 2 line. So got angle 5 and angle 8. And then another pair would be 4 and 7 are alternate interior angles. Okay, and then for same side interior angles, let me erase these first of all. For same side interior, we've got 6 and 8. And another set, you might not be seeing them because they're kind of facing the other direction, but angle 1 and angle 2 would be same side interior. Okay. All right. So again, it's really important to know those different angle pairs. The ones that they did not mention yet were alternate exterior, but we'll see those at another point. It's really important to know those different angle pairs. That's going to be used a ton in this chapter and in future chapters. So being able to identify them is good. But also understanding that they can have these names, whether the lines are parallel or not. But it's just if the lines are parallel, we can go further with it to say which ones are congruent and which ones are supplementary. Okay, so now once we move to number 8, let's see, we're going to set up a couple of true equations to be able to solve for 8 and 9, and I'm going to do that up above these problems. So if I look at number 8 here, it says find the value of x for which a is parallel to b. So I want to look at these 2 angles right here and think what kind of angles are they? And hopefully you're thinking corresponding. And then think, okay, if those lines are parallel, what do I know about corresponding angles? And I'd say they're congruent to each other. So I can say 2x minus 8 is equal to x plus 66. And then you just need to solve for that, solve for x. So if I go and subtract x from both sides, I get x minus 8 is equal to 66. And if I go and add 8 to both sides, I get x is 74. And sometimes they may ask you to plug back in and find the angle measurements. If you want to plug in for x, you should get those angle measurements being the same, but all they're really asking for on this particular question is to figure out what x is. If you look at 9, on number 9, if I look at these 2 angles and think what kind of angles are they, those 2 are same side interior angles. And if you think, okay, if these lines A and B are parallel, what would I know about these same side interior angles? And they would be supplementary, which means, again, they add up to 180. So I can say 4x plus 88 is equal to 180. If I go and subtract 88 from both sides, then I end up with 92. And if I go and divide by 4 on each side, I get x is equal to 23. Okay, so moving on, if we look at number 10, I'm going to do that one down below right here. Again, on number 10, then on this one, it looks a little different, but they didn't tell me the lines are parallel. But if I see that these are both right angles, I therefore know that these two lines must be parallel to each other. And if they are parallel, if it helps you to extend them out, sometimes it helps people to see what's going on better. If I extend those out and also like extend this line out to make it look like a transversal, sometimes that just helps people see what's going on a little better. And then they can identify these two angles as same side interior angles. And because they're same side interior, that means since the lines are parallel, those would be supplementary. So I could say 2x plus 2 plus 108 is equal to 180. Oh, it's supposed to be an 8. There we go. Okay, so if I go ahead and solve for that, I've got 2x plus 110 is equal to 180. So 2x is equal to 70, and therefore x is equal to 35. All right, so from there, we can move along, and now we're going to do some of the problems like you did on the 3-2 worksheet and on the 3-3 worksheet. These are good practice where it has a combination of ones from section 3-2 and section 3-3. So if we look at number 11, first pay attention to the given information, and I can see that A is parallel to B. And so again, I can see that there's 3 angles marked, angle 1, angle 2, and angle 3. And so I want to decide which 2 I'm going to deal with. Well, if these are my 2 parallel lines, I've got to identify my transversal. And my transversal in this case has to be the line that goes through the 2 parallel lines, but also goes beside 2 of the angles that I'm actually dealing with. So this has to be my transversal. So that means I'm not using transversal D at all. So if it helps you to scribble it out so it doesn't mess you up, that's fine, or you can cover it up with your hand. So now based on this information, I can say that angle 1 is what to angle 2. So since those lines are parallel, I can tell that those 2 angles are going to be congruent to each other. And the reason is because since the lines are parallel, those corresponding angles have to be congruent. And I'm going to write the reason like that. I'm going to say if lines parallel, then corresponding angles congruent. Okay, on the next one, it tells us that angle 12 is supplementary to angle 6. So if I look at the 12 and I look at the 6, and I want to try to answer this information, okay, first of all, there is not a transversal, a line that goes beside both of those angles, that goes through 2 lines and goes beside both of those angles. So in that case, I can't do anything else with this problem, so I'm just going to say no conclusion. Okay, I'm not even going to say lines are parallel because I don't know that those lines are parallel just based on 12 and 6 being supplementary. Okay, I can't use this information. All right, if we look down at 13, okay, it says angle 3 is congruent to angle 6. So I'm starting off by saying angle 3 is congruent to angle 6. Okay, and they're wanting me to say if I can say the lines are parallel based on that information. Well, if I cover up, this part of the picture, because I'm not really dealing with that, and I look at that 3 and 6, I can tell those are same side interior angles. But same side interior angles would have to be told to me that they're supplementary for me to say the lines are parallel, not congruent. Just because they're congruent does not necessarily mean those lines are parallel. If they were both 30 degrees, 3 and 6, C and D would end up being pointed at each other, not parallel for sure. So this is another one that is no conclusion. And it's all because of that congruent symbol right there. If that had said supplementary, we could end up reaching a conclusion from that. So just be careful about the little details. On 14, it says angle 3 is supplementary to angle 12. Okay, so now that one is giving me some good information that I can use. Okay, I can tell based on that, this is my transversal that's going by both of those angles. So here's my two lines that make up the other sides of those angles. So I'm not dealing with this. So if I look at those two angles, I can see that those are same side interior angles. And since they're supplementary, I know that those lines A and B must be parallel to each other. So that's when I fill in here A and B. And then my theorem is that if same side interior angles are supplementary, then the lines are parallel. Okay. And then the last two problems here, number 15 and 16. On number 15, it tells me that angle 3 is congruent to angle 5. So I can see that 3 and 5 are congruent to each other. So again, if I pick out my transversal, that's going to be A because it goes beside both of those angles and goes through two other lines. I can see that the two lines that would be parallel would be A, C, and D. And so I'm going to scratch out that part of the picture. So again, based on this information, I can see 3 and 5 are alternate interior angles. And since they're congruent, I know lines C and D must be parallel. So I'm going to put C and D here. And I realize, sorry for the delay here. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wrote this right up here on 14. Again, the way that I knew how to write this sentence is I'm looking at this information right here. I'm looking to see that it's talking about supplementary first. So I wrote down here, I talked about supplementary first in my sentence. And then I moved to saying the lines are parallel. So you can see my sentence moves into saying the lines are parallel second. If you look back up at number 11 here, you can see I have my sentence written, the theorem written the opposite direction. But again, it's all based on the fact that they gave me the lines are parallel. So I talked about lines being parallel first, and then it's talking about angles being congruent. So then I talked about angles being congruent. So let that information help tell you which way to write this statement. Okay, so then down here, again, we're starting off with angles being congruent. So I can say if alternate interior angles congruent, then it's talking about lines being parallel. So I can say then lines parallel. Okay, and then last one is 5 is congruent to 15. So 5 is congruent to 15. So again, find your transversal. Here's my transversal. Here's my two parallel lines. Okay. And so I'm going to block out this part of the picture so it doesn't confuse me. And if I look at those two angles, I can see those are alternate exterior angles. They're outside the two lines, different sides of the transversal. And since they are congruent, I know these two lines A and B must be parallel. And then when I go ahead and write my theorem, I can say, again, I'm talking about the angles being congruent first. So I can say if alternate exterior angles are congruent, then we're talking about the lines being parallel, then lines parallel. All right, so hopefully that helps. And now I want you to try the other part of the quiz review at the beginning of the packet and kind of follow the same pattern we're doing here. And then next class, you can let me know if you have any questions on the review, and then that following homework assignment will be to do a Canvas quiz. All right. Let me know if you have any questions.